I'll start with the DEC if I could, and I'm glad that Senator May opened with a question about resources available. For my colleagues' benefit, as much as DEC's, every year at budget time, I ask the Commissioner, do you have enough resources to do everything that we task you to do? Because from my perspective, we're overtasking DEC, and my concern is that we ask you to do so much that none of it or a lot of it isn't getting done as well as it could be. So I'm concerned about, the ratio or, how much resources we made available. But my question in that vein would be, every lake situation is different, and I don't even mean that physically, as to what how the water gets in it, the flow of the water there, whether it's a kettle lake or, the geology of the lakes, but then, the ownership of the lakes, the responsibility. I represent Lake George. Lake George is very unique because it's highly regulated, it has its own park commission, and then you've got a lot of lakes that are privately owned, municipally owned. So, my concerns or my questions, I guess, would be, how are we approaching tracking, and again, you've got a prevention versus a response. You're trying to prevent HABs, but then when a HAB occurs, there's a response. But, how are we going at these depending on the lake as far as whose responsibility is it? If it's a state facility and a state owned, then it's easy to swoop in there and do whatever you got to do. But if you're working with a private owner, if you're working with municipalities, what is the mix between an education effort versus a regulatory effort versus an enforcement effort? And again, how are we divvying up the resources? How do you go at, all right, I mean, it's very easy to step into Lake George, and it's very easy to justify spending a lot of money on Lake George. There's a lot going there because we control a lot of pieces on the board, but, is jumping into a Lake George issue the most, with everything we got, the best use of the resources? How do you decide where we're going to put these efforts? Small lakes, big lakes, private lakes, tourist lakes, high-vis lakes versus wealthier lakes versus poorer lakes. How are we administering those limited resources?
It's definitely a complex issue. I'll definitely give you that. But I think that we do a pretty good job well, more than a pretty good job. I think we do a great job of handling it, especially with the resources that we have, which is pretty fantastic, more than probably many other states in the U.S. And we try to use them very wisely, those resources, and a lot of it comes down to partnership and collaboration, right? So, and it depends on what we see as the potential root cause of harmful algal blooms in a specific water body, right? So, and then also it comes down to the ownership piece. So if there are things that we can do as an agency when it's related to, say, speedies permitted discharges, that might be contributing nutrients, we would address those sources. If it comes to non-point source issues along the landscape, we work with the whole community, right? And a lot of different partners across the agencies as well to try and address those non-point source issues. And then also trying to empower lake associations to be able to, and private communities to be able to address the issues on their lakes by providing funding to and resources to municipalities that they can come into and apply for. And we encourage a collaboration between, say, lake associations and municipalities, especially in those areas where maybe it's more privately owned type of setting. And so that you get an entire community buy-in to address the issue. And then when it comes to, say, disadvantaged communities, because I think that was a piece of the question, we are extremely proud of the work that we are doing when it comes to disadvantaged communities and empowering them to be able to address the environmental issues that they're facing, especially HABs. So, for example, one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is improved our grant opportunities, especially our WQIP and other now with Bond Act, to be able to provide more resources to disadvantaged communities. Just alone in WQIP last year, 87% of our awards, of our funding, went to disadvantaged communities. And that's because of the way that we've structured the grants to be able to give them, that benefit.
Okay. My concern obviously is, a smaller community. I've got 84 towns, and some have the capability of jumping on an issue like this, and some don't. Are they first come, first serve, or are these competitive grants? Because some have, they got studies sitting on the shelf, and when money becomes available, they just pluck that study off the shelf, and they're first in line with a organized ask. And then others, they just don't have the staff resources to even put together a grant application. Sorry, thank you.
No, you can keep going.
Are they first come, first serve, or are they competitive? The smaller municipalities that I represent will have a hard time, and we see this in a lot of other grant areas. This isn't unique to, water quality. These are water and wastewater grants and things like that.
Yeah, understood. And it's something that we definitely need to make sure that we address, and I believe that we are. So through those grants that are competitive, we advocate for folks to utilize our community assistance teams, something that we do with Environmental Facilities Corporation and our other agencies and our own grant staff to try and provide opportunities for communication with applicants to come in for those grants.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Chairman.